I want you to think about the last time you felt like you could take a truly full breath. Not just a functional breath that gets you through the moment, but the kind of breath where your lungs expand all the way, where your chest feels open and clear, where you finish and feel satisfied rather than like you barely got enough. For many people over 70, that experience has become so infrequent that they have stopped noticing its absence. They wake up with something in the back of the throat. They clear it, and it comes back. Their chest feels dense in the morning, like there is weight sitting on it. They cough after meals. They feel congested even when they do not have a cold. My name is Dr. Rachel Storms, and I want to spend the next 25 minutes explaining why a significant portion of what I just described is not inevitable aging. It is a dietary problem with a dietary solution. Specifically, I am going to walk you through 4 foods that have a disproportionate and largely unrecognized impact on mucus production, mucus viscosity, and respiratory inflammation in adults over 70. I will give you the biology, I will give you the specific substitutions, and I will give you a practical protocol you can begin today. I want to flag one thing before we start. The 4th food on this list is one that many physicians actively recommend. It is the one that generates the most disbelief. Stay with me. Before we talk about specific foods, I need to explain what is happening in the respiratory tract after 70 because the impact of certain foods on mucus production is not the same at 70 as it was at 40. The difference comes down to a structure called the mucociliary escalator, one of the most important and least discussed components of respiratory health. The airways of your lungs are lined with 2 things: a layer of mucus that traps particles, pathogens, and debris, and microscopic hair-like structures called cilia that beat rhythmically to move that mucus upward. In a healthy young adult, the cilia beat approximately 1,000 times per minute. In adults over 70, ciliary beat frequency has declined by 20 to 30%. The cilia are slower and less coordinated. This is the baseline. Now consider what happens when you add foods that independently increase mucus production or increase mucus viscosity. You are adding volume and thickness to a system already running at reduced capacity. And here is the connection. The gut and the lungs are in constant communication through what researchers call the gut-lung axis. Inflammation triggered in the digestive tract does not stay localized. It elevates systemic inflammatory markers, particularly interleukin-6, interleukin-13, and tumor necrosis factor alpha, that directly affect mucus-secreting goblet cells in the respiratory lining. When systemic inflammation rises, goblet cells proliferate and increase their output. You eat something inflammatory at breakfast. By mid-morning, your airways are producing more mucus than before. This is robustly supported in immunology. With that context established, let us talk about the first food. I want to be careful here because this topic attracts a lot of oversimplification. The food is dairy, and the nuance matters considerably. For a subset of people, particularly those with sensitivity to a specific milk protein called casein A1, dairy consumption does increase mucus viscosity, not necessarily volume, but thickness. The mechanism involves a peptide called beta-casomorphin 7, or BCM7, released when casein A1 is digested. BCM7 has been shown to stimulate mucin secretion from respiratory goblet cells. The clinical signal, if your congestion is worse in the mornings after having dairy, or if clearing your throat is persistent on dairy days, that is meaningful. The test is simple. Eliminate dairy for 3 weeks and observe. Aged cheeses like cheddar or Parmesan have undergone fermentation that modifies protein structure and may generate more peptides than fresh dairy like ricotta or mozzarella. Skim milk often provokes more symptoms than full fat. If you want a dairy alternative, the cleanest options are unsweetened almond milk and full-fat coconut milk. Oat milk contains carbohydrates that may be relevant for reasons I will explain later. The second food is refined sugar. I want to explain this beyond the generic messaging. We will focus on the respiratory microbiome and inflammatory mediators that regulate mucus. Your respiratory tract is not sterile. It hosts a complex community of microorganisms. High refined sugar intake shifts the metabolic environment, favoring pro-inflammatory species over protective ones. This dysbiosis is an active area of research. The mechanism involves glycation, sugar molecules attaching to proteins to generate advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. These trigger the RAGE receptor, a potent driver of NF-κB-mediated inflammation. The targets to reduce are added sugars in beverages, sweetened yogurts, pastries, but also fruit juices, which deliver a concentrated sugar load, and dried fruits, which are extraordinary in sugar concentration. The substitution I recommend most is berries. Fresh or frozen blueberries and raspberries are low in sugar, high in anthocyanins with anti-inflammatory properties, and contain quercetin, which inhibits histamine release. The third food is refined flour and processed starches. Most seniors experiencing respiratory symptoms here are not gluten-sensitive in the clinical sense. The mechanism is different and less discussed. Refined starch has a high glycemic index. It converts to glucose rapidly, producing a spike in insulin that drives a pro-inflammatory state. Additionally, these foods contain additives that affect gut-lung axis signaling. The rule is simple. If a packaged, starchy product has more than 5 ingredients and you cannot identify all of them as food, put it back. We want to reduce the frequency of processing a complex soup of inflammatory additives. The substitutions: sweet potato instead of white potato, quinoa or brown rice, and sourdough bread made through long fermentation. This process breaks down starch and modifies gluten structure to reduce inflammatory signaling. Now, food number 4. The category is processed foods marketed as healthy or convenient for seniors. The specific ingredient to look for is carrageenan. Disbelief is common here. Stay with me. Carrageenan is a thickening agent derived from red seaweed. It's in plant-based milks, low-fat yogurts, and meal replacement drinks, specifically positioned as heart-healthy or senior-friendly. It sounds natural, but it's ubiquitous. Multiple studies, notably by Dr. Joanne Tobacman, show carrageenan triggers inflammatory signaling in the gut through NF-κB. The gut-lung axis then carries that signal to your respiratory mucosa. It's a hidden inflammatory input. The irony is significant. Someone eliminates dairy correctly, but replaces it with almond milk containing carrageenan. Symptoms persist, and they conclude diet doesn't help. Reading labels for carrageenan specifically is a critical step. Now, a 30-second recipe that actively works against mucus: ginger, turmeric, and lemon. Grated ginger, turmeric root or powder, and half a lemon steeped in hot water. Consume warm, once daily, in the morning. Ginger contains gingerols that inhibit inflammatory mediators. Curcumin in turmeric inhibits NF-κB and has mucolytic properties. Lemon provides vitamin C and bioflavonoids to support the respiratory lining. The cumulative impact is meaningful. One caveat: if you are on blood thinners like warfarin or aspirin, speak with your physician first. Ginger has mild anticoagulant properties. A small daily cup is generally well tolerated, but the conversation is worth having. Here is the protocol. Days 1 to 3, eliminate the 4 foods and add the tea and berries. Days 4 to 5, note changes in morning congestion. Most notice a difference in thickness before volume. Days 6 to 7, check your breathing quality benchmark. For those with COPD or chronic bronchitis, these changes are complementary to your medical management, not a replacement. Do not adjust prescribed medication. Reducing the inflammatory load makes your treatment more effective. The relationship between what we eat and how we breathe is rarely discussed in senior care. Pulmonologists, gastroenterologists, and cardiologists often don't connect the dots. But the gut-lung axis is published in the world's top medical journals. You now have the information. If this helped you, write "clean lungs" in the comments. I'll respond with an additional tip on breathing mechanics for the first 50 comments. Share this with someone who needs it. It might not be just aging. Take care.